Hello, I'm Ryan Cook, and this is Civic Tech Chat, a podcast about the civic technology movement. We seek to harness the power technology has to improve the delivery of public services to people everywhere.
Excellent. I'm happy to have you both on here, and I'm pretty excited to dive into a conversation here about a couple of different topics. The first of those that I was hoping to bring up is this kind of current event thread about Facebook and its ever happening problems with political communication on its platform. For folks that aren't caught up on it, Facebook's been going through some trials and tribulations about the way it's handling political ads in particular. For instance, they decided to add some fact-checking on their platform for advertising in particular, but that does not extend to politicians on the platform. And that goes from the federal level down through even like regional, county, city candidates and the like. Going on from that, earlier this month, a memo was surfaced from Andrew Bosworth, who's the head of virtual reality and augmented reality at Facebook, warning that they shouldn't tilt the scales against Trump in the upcoming cycle. And then adding to that again, late last year, there was the revelation that Trump and Zuckerberg had met privately twice. All of this kind of builds some context for this kind of interesting and murky situation the organization finds itself in its position in the political landscape. Liam, do you have any initial reactions to that event as it's been playing out?
For me, I mean, honestly, I wasn't surprised. And to a certain extent, I don't know. I feel like there isn't necessarily the proper understanding on by a government or a law standard on how data and technology plays a role in right now. So it's like, we have these rules that now companies like Facebook are essentially setting themselves, and there's no standard that we can necessarily hold them to. So we're kind of forced to just be just kind of let them do whatever. And that's something that I think the first thing we should do is kind of, figure out, okay, let's educate government and bring up government saying, hey, this is what the effect, what data has to offer and what technology has to offer. And then from there, I think we'll be able to forge a path that way.
So the Federal Trade Commission is the main agency responsible for regulating a lot of this stuff. And, they've been kind of saying that and pointing to that as the main reason why they're not doing more on it. But even in areas where they do have very clear laws, regulations, and staff to regulate, for example, the Children's Online Privacy Protection Act, COPPA, gives them a lot of power to fine and regulate and enforce agencies. And they're still not fully enforcing the regulations that they have. So, for example, I'm closely following Chopra's. He's one of the commissioners, and he's been dissenting on a lot of the opinions lately, pointing out that, a lot of the stuff that they're going after Google or Facebook for, they're not even clawing back fines that meet the profit that the companies made. So for example, YouTube was baiting, Chopra tweeted this, which is pretty cool. YouTube is baiting kids with nursery rhymes, cartoons, and more to feed its massively profitable behavioral advertising business and selling that advertising data. It was very lucrative and it was illegal, and they really barely scratch the surface in finding and enforcing them. So I think it's a lot less about educating government or, recruiting the right people, even though that's always very important and government needs more tech folks. But there also needs to be a will to really go after these companies when they're fully, clearly breaking the laws. And we're still not even doing that. Also, on another angle, I believe that, it's kind of too late for this election to really hope for much on this front. And that's why I believe that we need to run a candidate who can truly build a grassroots movement. And that means having people calling, having actual real humans knocking on doors and talking and having conversations with people. You need someone who's getting endorsements from massive movements of people like Sunrise Movement and stuff. So we all really need to be out there knocking on doors and learning how to organize, because even if Democrats win, we're still going to need to keep doing that to hold people accountable and to push agencies to really enforce the law.
Something you mentioned in there, that idea about like enforcing the existing laws, because as you mentioned, like these companies are breaking existing laws, but the consequences are either small, where they're still making a profit, or they don't happen at all. In that dissent that you mentioned in your answer, one of the things that I thought came out of that's like as a theme that's interesting there is this idea that the FTC is treating larger organizations much differently than smaller ones, whereas there might have been instances where they were able to, say, go and file suit against a smaller organization with, you know, principals as defendants, and they like go through and they actually like claw back profits from that organization. But then you take an organization like Google or like Facebook that are much larger, and maybe some of it is like some fear of the legal defense they could maintain. I'm not sure if that's like the why, but it does seem like there is a different approach taken.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's a lot easier to go after the little guys than it is. And you see that all across government. I mean, you see that the IRS has been saying they really only go after, not rich people because they're easier and they have the resources to go after them. The Federal Election Commission, unfortunately, doesn't have the resources or the commissioners to even vote on enforcing really big campaign finance violations. So you see like huge campaigns get away with breaking laws constantly, and small campaigns get, a lot of fines. So yeah, I think it's, we need a lot of political will, and we need like a fully staffed commission at the Federal Election Commission and like different things to be able to even start scratching the surface on this. We have a question. Somebody was asking what level of enforcement would be needed. I guess we kind of got into that. But yeah, I mean, I'd say start with like at least clawing back enough to like get at the profits they made for that, make it hurt for the future, hold actual individuals accountable for breaking the law. There were a lot of folks who, like right up to the top, Sheryl Sandberg, who signed off on a lot of illegal behavior, and they, nothing happened to them. We need to have fines that really make it hurt and make them remember, and really send a message that we will be enforcing the law.
Yeah, I accountability. Yeah, that's one. I think that making it hurt, especially where, holding people accountable is one thing, but overall as a company, right? I think that they should, like, the whole company kind of should feel it, saying, okay, hey, like, this is something that's not okay, no matter who it is. And I think that one sends a message to a particular company, but also depending on the size of that company, it sends a message to almost the industry, saying that's not okay.
Well, and holding individual actors accountable too. Like, people need to know that, like, you, just because you're at a huge company and have great lawyers, right, you're not just protected from breaking the law. Like, you right, will be held accountable for approving law breaking.
Right.
Yeah, I think that's absolutely true. Because I think what tends to happen with those things being absent is companies either like create a fund and set money aside for the potential damages, and then they still make a profit. And then the folks that did the act will do it again because it worked and they made a profit and their shareholders are happy. So right, I think you're both absolutely right. Like that type of culture does need to change for us to see wholesale change at a larger level.
Yeah, make it hurt enough that the shareholders care.
Right.
And I think so. I think we've talked a bit about, I guess, like the existing laws and how they're being broken, and a bit about maybe like our personal expectations about what that should look like. Beyond what it currently exists, do you all have opinions on if there should be like additional regulation on that talks about like the responsibility a platform has, whether it's around the risk of like, for example, like with Google and YouTube with content that's directly related to children, or in the political sphere, like the messaging that's being placed on the platform. Essentially, like, how much responsibility should we be putting on the runner of the platform on the things that are posted on the platform?
First, I'll say I'm not an expert on this. And I think like one of the most important things is to really incorporate the communities that are affected by this stuff when you're designing any kind of laws or enforcements. Like if you look at, for example, Sesta Fosta, which, had a good idea of going after child prostitution rings and stuff, but it's really ended up making really harming the sex worker community and making them a lot less safe. It's a lot harder for them to vet clients or share information about clients or promote their work in a safe place, so they don't have to literally go out on the street and potentially encounter a lot of violence. So that's where I would start, is not repeating the mistakes of something like Sesta Fosta by actually talking to the communities affected by this.
I feel like whatever decision a platform makes, because I don't know, because Twitter is multiple times have said that they don't want to be the ones who censor or do anything. They just kind of provide the platform, which I mean, again, like Leah said, I'm not at all an expert on this, so I mean, my opinion is just, whatever they decide, I think it should be more of like a, hey, this applies to everyone. Don't, you can't. I mean, when you go into like picking and choosing at that point, that's I guess the line where I would draw.
I think also, was it Sacha Baron Cohen had a really great speech on this, where he talked about like, Facebook is just like, it's not up to us. We don't have to, we're a business. And he was pointing out that like, if you ran a business like a restaurant, you would not be required to allow a Nazi to run around and harass your customers and stuff. So like, I think like the more we can like what he's doing to make like real life examples and like really show the kind of bullshit and hypocrisy that these huge companies are relying upon to get away with this stuff and excuse themselves from any responsibility for the potential disaster they're wreaking across communities and help they're providing to Nazi and fascism, and its spread around the world is important.
I really like the mention of the like real world analogies, because I think if you're not in the existing conversation, or it's not a thing that you regularly follow, it probably feels very abstract to you. Like unless you're on Twitter all the time and like running into that type of messaging, or on Facebook and like you like understand it's there, or even on the like Google explanation, like if you understand like what it means to have information sold to like a third party, like that's all stuff that you can't really like see it, touch it. You don't really you don't feel the impact immediately. It's something that maybe you feel later through exposure, or you find out later like that your information was sold to somebody. So I really like that thought of trying to tie it to something that's a bit more relatable.
Yeah, I mean, I think communication on this stuff is key, and like I think it's also, it's easy to like think like, how the heck would I do that? It seems enormous, like it seems like a huge challenge, but like these companies know how to cope with this stuff. They know how to handle this stuff. Like they've been doing it to prevent women's nipples on their platforms for years and years and years, right? And they have huge groups of people enforcing that. So I think, but like that's also built on the backs of underpaid staffers who are getting PTSD from like looking at violent videos all the time and stuff. So it's challenging and it's difficult, but like they definitely know a lot of obvious ways and could be doing far, far more than they are now. We're not expecting perfection, but we are asking them to just fucking try a tiny bit.
So I think something that is intertwined in what we've been talking about is also the amount of power that these organizations seem to hold now over our communications, as like more and more people use one of these platforms to either find out what's going on in the world, to communicate with loved ones, all of that sort of thing. And of course, that when you talk about power, especially in something like communications, that can also lead to conversations about antitrust, which I think is why you see like folks at the federal level looking into these platforms from that perspective. Do y'all have like a perspective on that kind of relationship? Like, are these companies getting too much influence, too much power over the way we communicate?
Yes, 100%. I think that, I think it's more of It's not the fact that like their software or whatever is what people are choosing. It's the fact of that they're that a lot of like supplemental like Google's like over like their phones, right? They kind of took over, selling phones, and like Apple is known to do that, where they create their own ecosystem, and it's a very high barrier to entry if you're not buying their particular thing. So I think it's more than just the way we communicate. I think they're going for just overall like how we live our lives, and I think that's, I don't know. It almost seems like legally it doesn't look like a monopoly, but it's almost like a monopoly on your life, where you're basically now being forced to adopt a lot of just whatever. Like you buy one thing, and then you're kind of screwed in this one ecosystem where you can't leave or do anything else without making it hard to leave.
Yeah, I mean, I think again, like getting back to like kind of the government angle, like we really need leadership in these agencies that is willing to actually go after corporations and like actually make them follow the law and pay when they don't. And like we just don't have that right now when you look at like agencies responsible for enforcing the monopolies. I mean, these companies absolutely are monopolies, and like maybe they do need to be broken up, but I don't know. I'm not an expert in that, but like if you look at the National Labor Relations Board, like they are largely enforcing complaints of white male discrimination at this point and not really protecting the workers at these agencies and stuff. So I think like all across government, we need leadership that is willing to like articulate the companies that are harming us and go after them in ways that actually make them learn. Do you want to switch to another topic? We could talk about IRS a little bit.
Yeah, I think it's really good timing to talk about IRS. Yeah.
So I think this really ties into what we were talking about like agency leadership, being willing to push back against corporations. And this is a really exciting development that I think had to make its way into the court before it finally broke through. But the IRS had this very long agreement with the major tax prep organizations like TurboTax. And it's funny because in government, a lot of times when people talk about improving the user experience of a form or improving access to something, they often point to TurboTax as like an example of like a great like example of a form experience. But those companies actively lobbied and pushed strongly to prevent the IRS from giving you a simpler experience. I think it's also a bad example because making forms easier is really not necessarily the best way to improve your experience with the government. I mean, in a lot of cases, we can just obviate them and get rid of them entirely. So, for example, the IRS already knows automatically pretty much everything that you should be paying and could just send you a nearly completed tax form that you can correct or add deductions to. California tested this out and it was very successful, but then got killed because of lobbying like companies like Intuit who make TurboTax. And so this new development drops that agreement because a lot of these companies were not really keeping up their side of the bargain. And part of what they were supposed to be doing was providing middle and low income folks with free access to their tools. And they were specifically trying to hide them from Google, trying to make it much harder to actually access and use them. It's a 2-decade-old agreement, and the industry had it like they had with industry. And so I'm excited to see, and it's been really barring IRS from making a lot more, like a lot of different kinds of improvements. So I'm really excited to see where this leads. It's also the result of some significant investigative reporting by ProPublica. So definitely check out their recent writing on that.
For sure. And I think we'll have to go ahead and make sure that piece is linked in the podcast episode description when it's released. That's a good read. One of the things that I took from that piece that is part of that agreement that I think is really cool, although it sounds like a small thing, is that there's some like naming convention requirements, like that, like the free programs have to be named like roughly a similar thing across different companies' implementations. Because as a user of tax software, I know one thing that confuses the crap out of me often is like the different editions that they then have very confusing communication about like what you're paying for versus what you're not. And then all of a sudden you get to the end and they're like, give us a bunch of money, Ryan. We did things that you promised to pay us for. And it can be very confusing. I can only imagine like, and crap, I work with computers for a living. So I can't imagine what it's like if, you're not using software all that often, now you're into this tool. And yeah, I just imagine it's confusing.
Yeah. I mean, that's their right. Capitalist gonna capital. So like, that's always going to be their goal, right? Is to like push you into paying more for things or making it seem a lot more complicated than it actually is, so that you think you got to pay them more for all kinds of different things when really these things could be a lot simpler without their lobbying.
Oh, a question to clarify. So is this mostly like an agreement as far as like the free edition goes, where others would provide that, or did the government have to build something as part of this as well?
So it changed. Well, it officially ruled that these companies can no longer hide or ban the robots.txt on their site, so that these still need to be available, and the IRS is free to start making and improving the forms and so TBD. It's always it's tough, but there's a lot of great folks in IRS over on tech, or folks who have like tried to work on that and weren't able to because of these restrictions and had to leave. And so I'm really excited to see. I mean, I've already seen a flurry across civic tech of folks just absolutely thrilled, or who had tried to work on this in some way or another in the past, and the projects got stymied. So we'll see. Keep an eye on it.
That is really cool to hear. I'm glad that allotment was made. I think like the idea of like getting forms right is definitely a space where I think there's a lot of folks out there that are definitely willing to pitch in. So that's exciting news.
Yeah, but I mean, again, my big mission is kill all forms, right? Like universality of programs is the future of government. And so like because every time you put restrictions on who can access something or who qualifies to receive a benefit, you create a government monstrosity that is there then responsible for making sure you're the right person who gets it, or making sure you're the right person who applied. And I mean, obviously we want to make sure you are who you say you are, but like the more that we can just tax the billionaires and provide these programs to everyone without forcing people to go through endless hoops, or hire a lawyer to help them figure out how to go through the process, or hire, once they fall through the cracks, it's usually only the folks who can afford a lawyer or who already have some kind of representation, like the veteran service organizations, that will like really help them get through and get the benefit that they deserve and need. So kill all forms.
Yeah. Also, yes, it's quite terrible. Yeah, it doesn't really make sense to me.
I'm sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, no, I'm a newly grad, so I'm new to all this, and I've been doing all my research, and it's just, it doesn't, and they know, and they're the ones who tell you to do it this way.
Yeah, like Thayer was just saying in the comments, sorry if I'm screwing up your name, but like how terrible is it if you mess up on the form they send you, and then you can be fined and punished for screwing up when they already know how to do it. And I think that's a good point. Like that oftentimes like forms are really, no matter how easy you make them, like, and they rarely are easy, people are always going to mess up because they're not intuitive, or they didn't have the right information available to them at the time that they were trying to complete the form or something. And so like folks are constantly falling through the cracks, or having things getting endlessly delayed. And I think a lot of folks don't think about all of that monstrosity that has to get built when you put like small restrictions on who can access things like free student loans, or student loan forgiveness, or other benefits, healthcare. I
apologize if this comment is a bit beating on a dead horse, but I sometimes worry about with forums, and maybe this is like a thing that there's like an analog to public meetings, to where it's like sometimes a forum is there to be helpful, or a meeting is there to be helpful, and we actually want you to succeed at it. And sometimes the forum or public meeting is a thing that we just sort of threw out there so we could say we had it, we don't actually expect you to get past it. It's like meant to be like a gate to keep folks from getting to the thing that they are entitled to get to. So I'm definitely behind your kill forms mantra, because I think that's a rather prevalent behavior, unfortunately. So if you all feel oh, go ahead.
Go ahead. I was
Okay.
going to say, do you want to just kind of go through some random civic tech news, or?
Yeah, sure. I actually saw something that's coming up soon. If we want to mention a bit for folks that aren't following along, is I see in your notes here you have some mention of being excited about summit things, the Code for America Summit. Would you all like to chat about that for a minute?
Yeah. So Code for America Summit is the big gathering of all the civic tech people, ideally from all different levels. And one of the reasons I love it so much is it usually brings folks from state, local, municipal governments, and the federal government, folks who have, new startups in this space. There's usually not that many of the like huge old Beltway bandits, and a lot of the brigades, Code for America, like the volunteers and folks. And it's a really great opportunity to just see, like, we never get to see everyone, all in one place, because by definition, we're across the country working for different governments all across the country. And so it's a really great opportunity to like catch up and get the pulse of like what's going on in civic tech. And my talk was accepted. So we're going to be giving a talk about the program that we built out at the VA. We launched va.gov with user-centered design and Agile and all the lovely things. And then we realized, we really needed to scale up quickly to maintain control over the site and to keep up with all the additional benefits we needed to build to support veterans. So we built this program that is now about 8 teams that support the 15 teams who are currently building on va.gov. We do all the, I just left, but we do all the onboarding, and we do all the code and quality and design reviews and support, and help manage the infrastructure. We manage all the regulatory compliance and ensure and train folks in that. So what I'm excited to mostly talk about is, not just this is a program, you should copy it because it's massive, and I don't know how many folks are trying to build out such a huge thing, but kind of talking through how we used Agile and user-centered design on ourselves as we were developing this to figure out, how do we do this? Because we've had to change it a lot over the last year, and adjust and reorg and, use the methodologies we know work for building public services on ourselves to figure out how to do this thing, and everything with the idea of scaling eventually. So the idea is not always to have, half the teams that we're supporting be, part of the support, but ultimately build out something that is much more scalable for more and more and more teams.
I too am excited for the event,
yeah.
For a lot of the reasons you talked about. It is interesting, like there's that kind of like group of people that that's when you see them, is at these conferences, and that's like how those networks stay there. I am not going to give a talk, though. One of the things I'm hoping to do on behalf of this program is try to sneak in some interviews with folks. So I'm going to do a shameless call to action here. If you're going to Summit and you're listening to this and you're like following along here and you want to talk to Civic Tech Chat, feel free to get in contact with us, and maybe we can get your story in while we're there.
This event has always been, this is my 3rd summit I'm going to, and it's always been, I come from a brigade volunteer background. I'm mostly, even now I work in the private sector, and it's something that it really opened up a whole world to me. So, I went from, oh, hey, look, there's some people who are trying to do something, to, oh my gosh, there's like a whole movement of people everywhere. And it's really the first one was really eye opener, and I just absolutely loved it. And yeah, the people, it's, sometimes I say it's like, I look forward to these events, because a lot of times when you're, as brigade, when we're working on just as volunteers, there's a lot of people who really don't share the same mindset. They have their own agenda or whatever trying to do, working with us. but then you go to these events and it's all the same people, just people who are just interested, trying to make government better and trying to just help people. And it's so refreshing. It kind of like relights the fire / passion for what we do here. So yeah, I love it.
Yeah, and it kind of helps you reminds you like, I'm not crazy, I'm not failing, like this is hard, everyone has challenges, like yeah, it's good to get together. Is there like, are you going to be doing extra stuff for the brigade? Or I think I saw that the brigades are not doing like their own breakout thing this year.
Oh really? I thought that we are.
Or it's like not a separate day maybe. Yeah.
So usually, Wednesday, so it's a 3-day event, right? So on Wednesday, it's like just workshops that are outside of just the main festivities. But I think, I wasn't sure. I the last time I heard, we usually have like a brigade day where we have our own workshop that we go to and we kind of just like share ideas. So I believe that's still happening this year. I have not heard otherwise. But yeah, I mean, either way, even just outside of the world of brigades, I mean, it's just really, really good experience. So, for me, I've recently, so for the last year, I've been captain at my brigade, and for me, my biggest focus and one of the things that I'll be doing with Beta NYC, hopefully, I'm still talking to them, but they want to have a session on, or they're having a session on like brigade management and how like fundraising and like overall like how running a brigade works. And so I'll hopefully be on it. So maybe I'll be there. But except for that, no, I'm not doing anything else. I'm just there to take it all in.
That sounds like a good session, though. I think sometimes folks don't realize that like running a brigade is like you're running a small nonprofit, really. So there's like a lot of things to learn, a lot of skills to pick up.
Right.
So it's cool to hear that there's a thing to help out with that.
Yeah, I'm a little curious. Is that like that kind of like managing it? Is that one of the biggest challenges the brigades are focusing on right now? Like, are there any other things y'all are talking about?
Yeah, so managing a brigade, I mean, yes, it's essentially you want to kind of look at it, or at least the way I look at it is like we're like consultants to government or nonprofits or whoever we're working with. We're coming in, we're working on projects. So I mean, it's honestly it's a full-time job that you're there, and a lot of times, I mean, you're meeting with clients who are government who are like, hey, this is my work time, so I have to come meet you. And some of the bigger brigades are able to handle that. But then like our brigade, we're small. Like I still work a full-time 40-hour a week job, so now I have to like kind of come outside of that job, take these meetings during the day, mostly during the evenings, and then we have to also design, and then we have to have a team that designs sites. So I feel like it almost feels like a full-time job. But it's so I feel like that's where the real difficulty comes in running a brigade, is that you have to worry about finances. You have to, for certain things. Obviously, we get a lot of in-kind donations. A lot of like, it's easier for a nonprofit, but at the same time, we're like for us, like for the smaller brigades, we're running on maybe like a couple donations a year of like less than $1,000. So it's like, how do we host events? Where do we host them? How do we get that? How do we, get food for certain events? How do we, get marketing for certain events? And we're doing all this on our free time. So it's a time commitment, and that's and especially for me, I came in, like I said, I'm a recent college grad. I'm a computer science. I've grown up being a nerd. Like I play video games and code, and so coming into a whole business world of like how to run a business or a nonprofit is just, it's been a learning curve.
It's a lot. I remember when I was leading the Code for DC brigade many years ago, I just kept having this overwhelming feeling like, God, there would be so much I could do if I could just take like a month off work or something and like work
Exactly.
on this, you know, like
Exactly.
it's hard.
Yeah.
I can echo that feel. Sometimes I think about that with Code for Chicago. It's like, if I could just like dedicate some time, like maybe it could get the ball to a point. Out of curiosity, since both of you also have experience with this, do you feel like that, whether it's like the skills being picked up or just like tools to help struggle through these things, do you think those things are available in like an adequate fashion?
Yes, only because we are communicate. I mean, we know the importance of communication, right? The whole network can talk to each other. We have a full on Slack. We have, we can hit each other up one on one. And I feel like there would be a good use of a central like repository of assets, or just like ideas of people have, and we have a discourse, and there's a lot of there, but just something like you don't really go ask for. You kind of just go like look up, saying, hey, especially for a lot of like documents, a lot of templates. So how do we send emails out to a potential funder or something like that, or marketing assets, so things like that. I think that if you ask, it will be given. Is there? I don't know if it's there if you don't ask. Like if you don't know who to go talk to, I think it can be kind of hard to find that.
Yeah, I mean, I remember one thing that was always hard that I've heard is still kind of hard is leadership transitions. Like
Mm-hmm.
it's, and just doing something so much through volunteering, not getting paid at all for it, will always kind of be fraught. And lead to burnout for folks, because you're working more than 40 hours a week, which is already too many hours in my opinion. So like, yeah, I mean, I think that's still a big challenge. But it's also like one of the coolest things you can do
Yeah.
as a volunteer if you want to kind of level up your current skills or get to know your local government or people in your community who care about local government and tech and design. So I don't know. They've got a lot of smart folks, and like especially across the country, really dedicated, awesome folks who are working on it. But it's also like like 50,000 volunteers and like a 5-person team that's actually paid at CFA to manage it. Like that team does amazing stuff, but I think they should be a lot bigger.
Yeah.
Given how big the program is.
What do you think about this, Ryan?
So I think I would echo a lot of what you already said. So I won't like retread on that ground. Although the idea of like knowing where stuff is, though, I will I guess retread on that a little bit, because I think that is always an issue. Like trying to socialize information, it's like a thing that a lot of effort's put into. I know we try to do it in a number of different communication mediums, but I think that's like always going to be a struggle.
Yeah.
And then the other, like, I guess, like, this is more like a step in the process, but a thing I'm always thinking about. And I think other brigades think about this too. And this is only like maybe partially related to the question I asked, is the idea of like onboarding folks into the brigade and like trying to then maintain an interest level.
Yeah.
It can be hard if you don't like have that really fleshed out for your organization. And in part because of some of the things like Leo was expressing, like even people that are volunteering, oftentimes, they're already working 40 hours a week doing job thing. And now they're coming to your group with their free time, and they're lending it to you. So if you have no smooth way on there in a way that makes things seem engaging, it can be tough to keep folks around.
I agree 100%. That's actually a resource that I would love to get from other brigades as well. It's just like what they think about it, because retention of members is something that, I don't know, I feel like to a certain extent it's unique to your community, or it's kind of unique to the city, but at the same time it can definitely be quite similar. And getting those metrics, okay, what is your community like? How do you, like, for me, it's like I had to kind of feel it out. Just be like, okay, we went through a lot of people who would just show up and never come back, and then I would message them and I'd see them at other events and be like, hey, it's like, what's up? And I would get some feedback, but it's really just that feedback that I went through that we kind of figured out a way where people were more willing to stay and stick around.
That reminds me another thing, since we're speaking of like leave and pay. One thing that I'm kind of excited about is that the federal government now has parental leave. So if you didn't know, until now we had 0 leave. If you have a kid, you could take your personal leave, or you could possibly take some sick leave maybe. But they just amended the Family Medical Leave Act. So we get 12 weeks off if you have a kid. And what's so cool about the fact that they amended that act is that it also covers adoption, fostering, or serious health conditions for you or your family. So I feel like a lot of people were saying, oh, now I could actually work in the federal government and stay because I have this. And I was actually thinking like, oh, maybe I could have a kid. It's a little crazy, but and fun DC rumor, which I've heard from some pretty good sources, that we got this because the Trump administration was willing to negotiate pretty much anything to get Space Force, which is really just a reorg so far. So it's not even like a big new thing necessarily. So
that is exciting. I think it's like well worth the trade because I think Space Force is really just like some stations in places like Greenland that monitor satellites pretty much, right?
Yeah.
Like, plus I feel like it's like win-win for us
hopefully,
all. Like
hopefully, I hope it stays to that.
Right. I mean, we get leave, which is great, and we also get something we can joke about incessantly. So I mean, I feel like it's win-win for us.
Yeah. Hopefully, I mean, I really don't hope that it doesn't grow because I don't know. It was a quote. I think Jeff Bezos was talking about how he wanted all manufacturing to go to space, and Earth become like rezoned completely to be residential, which I don't understand. I don't get what he means by that or how that's going to happen, but I have a feeling that Space Force will have a thing part of that.
Interesting. Yeah, I mean, I feel like a lot of this is just related to like billionaires or like we're not going to cut back on emissions or do anything to combat climate change. So we're probably going to need a new planet. So let's start building out in space, right?
Yeah.
Like that's what a lot of them are focused on, Elon Musk.
Yeah.
So it's madness
really
and it's
is.
terrifying because this is really our only planet.
It just sounds so much like eccentric billionaire idea that they thought of while they were in their like mountain fortress, stroking a cat in like a large leather chair. Like, yes, we can build everything in space. Like, what is this?
Yeah, we'll be fine. And what about the rest of us who are stuck here?
Or isn't there
isn't there
like a dystopian
jobs?
Oh, right. Isn't there like a dystopian sci-fi story about this where like all of the wealthy billionaires go up into the upper atmosphere and leave all of us regular folks down on the planet to suffer or something? I can't remember the title, but
oh, is there?
I think there's a lot of them. There's The Expanse, which is pretty good.
Yeah, I don't know. Actually, it might be good if all manufacturing goes to space. That means that we're no longer creating emissions on Earth, right? So if it's possible, it is technically could be good. I don't know how long it would be or if it would work, but I mean technically, it would be that all the emissions would not be on Earth, to where we possibly could go back to a cleaner, healthier Earth that we live on. But I don't know.
Yeah, I am not optimistic enough to believe that that's viable. And also like it's still going to require a ton of people. Like I don't care how great he thinks he is at building his like drone delivery robots. Like I don't see a future in which we can manufacture all this stuff and like transport it back and forth without releasing a fuck ton of emissions. Like,
Right. That's true.
So,
I don't
but
know.
yeah, pollution bad. I agree on that.
Yeah.
And the back and forth is a good point. It does take a lot of energy to move stuff up to high atmosphere or to orbit. So it probably would need some solution to that. I am not qualified to propose one, but
yeah, neither am I.
I can see that it's probably.
Well, and are we assuming we're just going to like have a like population of people who are permanently stuck as like Amazon warehouse workers up in the sky? Like they're barely treating their workers here on the ground very well.
That's
like,
true.
what about when they don't have regulations or, like,
yeah, no, that would
permanent population stuck in the sky? Like that's basically exactly The Expanse. It's like we screwed up the Earth. That new sci-fi like that got picked up by Amazon, ironically.
Yeah.
It's like Earth is like kind of okay, mostly underwater. Most people have left for either Mars or they're like working class schlubs who get treated like crap, who are like the belters, who are like out in the asteroid belt, like manufacturing things. Like,
that show.
Bezos is just like he just re-upped the show and is like, hey, great idea. I want a class of people stuck on asteroids who I can treat like crap.
So I guess if you're out there and you're going to make a dystopian sci-fi story, I would ask that you put a disclaimer on the front that says, please don't take this as an idea. It is a dystopian sci-fi story.
Not a recommendation.
Not a recommendation.
One last thing I was just going to put in real quick is that if you're going to CFA Summit, make sure you book your flight to leave straight to Austin and not home so that you come to South by Southwest, which starts the day, I think like the last day of Summit or right after that. Because they're trying to build out a bunch more civic tech stuff. And I'm in Austin, so come say hi to me. They're doing I think there's this group Civic IO, which is a lot of mayors, South by Southwest, and our mayor's office hosting like a pitch for $10K for your civic tech startup.
Interesting.
It's like one thing. So, but even if that's not your thing, I've heard that they're expanding a bunch of the civic tech stuff at South by. So,
yeah,
come say hi. I will show you where all the good tacos are.
Awesome. Also, speaking of events around Summit, I think March 7th is Open Data Day this year. So I'm pretty sure a lot of brigades will be having events, maybe even other organizations. So that's also something, if it's in your city, to look for.
Yeah, doesn't Beta NYC usually do something big for that?
Yeah. I know we're doing one
like Open Data
in
Week
St.
or something.
Louis.
Noel's going to kill me for butchering this. Oh, here it is. Wait, no, I found it. Open Data Week 2020. Come on, show me the dates. February 29th through March 7th. So you could just have like a whole city tour of civic tech awesome events. That one is really awesome. You should check it out. It's called Open Data NYC. It's hosted by Beta NYC, the local brigade there.
Yeah. Also, if you're in St. Louis, we are also hosting an event. It's not going to be a full week. It's going to be a full day. But we are hosting an event for it. Come on by.
Awesome. Thank you both for sharing those events. It sounds like somebody, if they want to, they can plan a whole like civic tech vacation and just do the tour.
Oh, that would be great.
Oh, one more thing I just remembered. San Francisco Digital Service, they just started posting. They're expanding from like 25 to 40 people. And there's a lot of great folks. There's some folks from 18F who went over there, from Government Digital Service in the UK, who went over there. So they're hiring all the roles, and San Francisco is a city that really needs better public services. So be a part of that. They're doing it right.
Awesome.
So whether you wanted travel advice or you were looking for a job, you were just taken care of there in that in that time period there. So before we wind up wrapping up here, do you all have any more like little nuggets or plugs we want to sneak in here before?
I don't think so. Just if you're my friend or we've talked before, I just took 3 months off. So hit me up. I've got plenty of time on my hands and I want to catch up and learn more about what's going on in civic tech and possibly talk about it here. So,
yeah, I think I'm good. If you guys are new to the stream, this is our first ever stream. Please hit the follow button. You'll get a notification when we go live, and you guys can come hang out with us. It'll be really fun.
Agreed. I think we are going to try to make this a regular thing. And if for some reason you did miss this, this is also going to be released through the regular podcast things. So do make sure to check that out as well. Leah and Mohit, I want to thank you both for hanging out here and being on the stream, and looking forward to future conversations with y'all.
Yeah, definitely. Thanks for having us.
Yeah, thanks, Ryan.
You can follow us on Twitter using the handle @CivicTechChat. Visit us on the web at civictech.chat, or subscribe to us for content updates wherever it is you download your podcasts.